Good Sunday morning, everyone, and welcome into today's daily Bible reading for December the 11th. Sorry about that yesterday. It was November the 10th, and I'm sure that threw at least one person off probably. But today is December the 11th, and we're reading together from Proverbs 24. We've got just about a little bit over a week's worth left of reading in the Proverbs, and then we'll move into Ecclesiastes, and that will finish us up for the year. And just a reminder, in case you haven't heard me say yet, next year our reading is going to be from Genesis through Esther. We're going to tackle the historical books of the Old Testament, and then probably going to balance that out, since we're going to be reading through the Old Testament every day, probably going to balance that out with a preaching series through the Gospel of Mark, and try to keep us not too heavy one way or the other. So hopefully those will work well together as we study next year. Study together on a regular basis in our daily Bible readings, and then also doing a bit of preaching in the Gospels too. So hopefully that will be good for us next year as we continue on striving always to learn more and to be more familiar with God's Word, and to allow it to have an impact on the type of people that we are. Thanks so much for tuning in today. Let me go ahead and get our text up on the screen for us of Proverbs 24. Proverbs 24, we'll read together from this text, and then we'll do as we normally do. I'll give you my top three nuggets of wisdom that stand out to me from this text of Proverbs 24 today. Again, thanks for tuning in. Let's get to our reading here. Proverbs 24, verse number 1. Don't envy the evil or desire to be with them, for their hearts plan violence and their words stir up trouble. A house is built by wisdom, and it is established by understanding. By knowledge, the rooms are filled with every precious and beautiful treasure. A wise warrior is better than a strong one, and a man of knowledge than one of strength. For you should wage war with sound guidance. Victory comes with many counselors. Wisdom is inaccessible to a fool. He does not open his mouth at the city gate. The one who plots evil will be called a schemer. A foolish scheme is sin, and a mocker is detestable to people. If you do nothing in a difficult time, your strength is limited. Rescue those being cut off to death, and save those stumbling toward slaughter. If you say, we don't know about this, won't he who weighs hearts consider it? Won't he who protects your life know? Won't he repay a person according to his work? Eat honey, my son, for it is good, and the honeycomb is sweet to your palate. Realize that wisdom is the same for you. If you find it, you will have a future, and your hope will never fade. Don't set an ambush, you wicked one, at the camp of the righteous man. Don't destroy his dwelling. Though a righteous person falls 7 times, he will get up, but the wicked will stumble into ruin. Don't gloat when your enemy falls, and don't let your heart rejoice when he stumbles, or the Lord will see, be displeased, and turn his wrath away from him. Don't be agitated by evildoers, and don't envy the wicked, for the evil have no future, and the lamp of the wicked will be put out. My son, fear the Lord, as well as the king, and don't associate with rebels, for destruction will come suddenly from them. Who knows what distress these two can bring? And right there, we're going to that will conclude the readings that began back in chapter 22, verse 17, I believe it was. I believe it's chapter 22, 17 through chapter 24, verse 22 are the 30 wise sayings that Solomon lists here. So that concludes right there. Beginning of verse 23, though, we have these wise sayings, these sayings also belong to the wise. So we're going to keep on rolling with continued wise sayings. Just know that that concludes that particular section. The second half, verse 23, it is not good to show partiality in judgment. Whoever says to the guilty, you are innocent, people will curse him and nations will denounce him. But it will go well with those who convince the but it will go well with those who convict the guilty, and a generous blessing will come to them. Verse 26, he who gives an honest answer gives a kiss on the lips. Complete your work, your outside work, and prepare your field. Afterward, build your house. Don't testify against your neighbor without cause. Don't deceive with your lips. Don't say, I'll do to him what he did to me. I'll repay the man for what he has done. Verse 30, I went by the field of a slacker and the vineyard of one lacking sense. Thistles had come up everywhere, weeds covered the ground, and the stone wall was ruined. I saw and took it to heart. I looked and received instruction. A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the arms to rest, and your poverty will become like a robber, and your need like a bandit. And that is Proverbs 24. All right, so for my top three today, I want to begin back in verses 5 and 6. Verses 5 and 6. A wise warrior is better than a strong one, and a man of knowledge than one of strength. For you should wage war with sound guidance. Victory comes with many counselors. Whenever I look at this verse, I think about the reality that just because you're a stronger person doesn't mean you are going to win whatever the competition might be. Sure, you might be bigger, faster, stronger, but what comes to my mind is the phrase "work smarter, not harder." Work smarter, not harder. That often gets back to any type of work around the house that we might need to get done. Work the smartest way, not necessarily the hardest way, because the hardest way might get the job done, but it might not be the most efficient or the most effective way of doing something. That's where us using our brains and being wise and knowledgeable, that's where that really comes into play. So just because you're looking at someone like, wow, that's a big, strong person, that person's obviously going to win whatever the competition is, not necessarily the case. It's not necessarily the case that the person they are competing against, again, whatever the competition might be, is wiser. They might be able to find a more effective way to attack or defend so that they can have the victory in that competition. Same way for us, just because we might be big and strong, just because we might be the loudest, just because we might be the most brash, does not mean that we have the wisdom that is necessary in order to be really effective. One other thing I'll note is this phrase right here, a man of knowledge than one of strength. There's actually that's a hard text to translate, because it could mean this, or it could also mean a man of knowledge leads to strength. So that's something to consider as well, that if you are strong, good. But if you don't have the brains to match that strength, then not good. You might not be strong right now, but if you have knowledge and wisdom, then that might lead you to the ability to be strong as well. So just thinking about this text here, verses 5 and 6 again, just because you're the biggest and strongest doesn't mean you're the best. You have to consider the brains as well, consider wisdom, consider knowledge. Those can also, maybe even more so than just brute strength, can help us to be successful and bring the victory. So that is my number 1, verses 5 and 6. My number 2 for today is going to be verses 28 and 29. Verses 28 and 29. Don't testify against your neighbor without cause. Don't deceive with your lips. Don't say, I'll do to him what he did to me. I will pay the man for what he has done. There seems to be here some implied bad history between these two individuals, the neighbor against the neighbor. So don't testify against your neighbor without cause. Don't deceive with your lips. And that on its own is good wisdom. Don't be a false witness. It's one of the great 10 commandments. But notice that there's motivation that is spoken of here. The instruction is don't bear false witness. Don't deceive with your lips. Especially don't do it whenever you're seeking revenge. Don't allow revenge be a motivation to give false testimony. Don't say, I'll do to him what he did to me. I'll repay the man for what he has done. Don't do that. Don't allow some bad history to move you to act in a way that lacks integrity. Don't do it anyways, but especially be careful whenever you have those moments where the temptation to do something like this is motivated by some bad history. It doesn't matter what's happened between you and your neighbor. Don't bear false witness, and don't allow a bad history to motivate you to do something you ought not do. That's my number 2. Whether it be bearing false witness or anything else, don't allow this motivation, or don't allow this bad history to motivate you to do something wrong. It's not worth it. Again, kind of like we've seen in some other Proverbs, allow the Lord to do what he does. Allow him to get retribution if need be. So that's my number 2, verses 28 and 29. And finally, my last few verses are 30 through 34. And I want to focus first and foremost on the reality that, again, this is talking about those who are lazy, those who are sluggards, those who don't work hard. But the first thing I want to think about is the fact that what these verses show us, 30 through 34, what these 5 verses show us is that wise people learn from others. Again, I went by a field of a slacker and by the vineyard of one lacking sense. So Solomon's saying, I walked past this and I observed the outcome of the lazy person's behavior. I observed it. What I observed was thistles everywhere, weeds everywhere. The stone wall was ruined. I saw and took it to heart. I looked and received instruction. So from these verses, we take away the teaching point of don't be lazy, don't be a slacker. Because if you do, there's a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the arms, and your poverty is going to get you, and your needs are going to hit you like a bandit. So if you're not doing what's necessary to take care of business, then you're going to go from being in a position where you have something to being in a position where you don't have anything and you need it, and that where you don't have anything and you need everything. But on the other hand, here's this teaching point: learn from the mistakes of others. The wise learn from the mistakes of the slackers. They learn from the mistakes of the evil person. They learn from the mistakes of those who are not wise. So that to me is, this is a great teaching point to not be a person who slacks, but maybe even more so is the broader principle of learn from other people. Wise people learn from others. Wise people see things, they take it to heart. They look and they receive instruction. So let's be that type of people. Let's be the type of people that learn from others as we're observing life, as we're seeing the way certain behaviors, certain outcomes that certain behaviors bring. Let's be people who learn from that so that we can learn from other people's mistakes as opposed to learning from our own. Let's be that type of people. So my top 3 for today. Number 1, again, verses 5 and 6, a wise warrior is better than a strong one, a man of knowledge than one of strength, for you should wage war with sound guidance. Victory comes with many counselors. So it's not all about just brute strength. It's about wisdom, it's about knowledge, it's about listening to the right people. Number 2 is don't testify against your neighbor without cause. Don't deceive with your lips. Don't say, I'll come to him, I'll do to him what he did to me. I'll repay the man for what he has done. Don't be that type of person. Don't allow bad history to motivate us to do things that are lacking integrity. Don't be a false witness. Whatever it is, leave room for the Lord's justice. And then finally, verses 30 through 34, don't be lazy. Don't be a slacker. Don't be a sluggard. You're never going to get what you need at that point. In fact, all you're going to get is poverty. Your needs are going to show up really fast. But as well, for us as wise people, learn from these shortcomings of other people so we don't have to learn from our own mistakes. That's my top 3 for today. If you have anything that stands out to you from this text, please feel free to leave that in the comment section here on Facebook or YouTube. We are looking forward to being with everybody here in just a little bit for our Sunday Bible studies and worship assembly. It looks to be a great day. I'm really excited to see everyone for all of our Bible classes. And then in the worship assembly, we'll be talking about the life of King Saul, kind of doing an overview of his life and how he had a really great start, but there were a few mistakes that he made. Again, wise people learn from the mistakes of others. There were some mistakes that he made that led to his downfall. And hopefully, as we observe those today, we can learn from those mistakes and do everything we can to avoid them in our own lives. So I'm looking forward to studying through his life with you later on today. We'll be back at it again tomorrow as we read together from Proverbs 25. Very much looking forward to doing that with you as well. Take care and God bless.